Okay, everybody, I have 2 o'clock and I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to start a timer so I can keep myself on track. Welcome. I'm glad you're joining me this afternoon. Are you having a good co-ape so far? Okay, good. My name is Amanda Keller. I'm from East Tennessee. I'm the Assistant Director of the Knox Metro program. We have Knoxville and then 6 counties and a large IELCE program. My colleague here today is Crystal Herring. She's our data expert for the state of Tennessee. My original colleague was scheduled, but she had a new grandson that was born this morning, so she went back to Knoxville yesterday. So congratulations, Jen, if you're watching. Hi. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start. This is a really technology rich conference in my perspective. Heard a lot about AI, a lot of great things, but this presentation will be the opposite. I'm going to take you back to 1998 when I started teaching, and I'll tell you the origins of this method and how it came to be. So if you are looking for technology, this will not be what you're looking for. This is an old-fashioned way, but it works. So I hope you're not disappointed in that. Thank you. Okay, if you have a piece of paper, and I had planned to bring these, and then it dawned on me nobody uses paper anymore. So somewhere that you can write and make notes, I want you to start yourself a strategy sheet. Just give it that title at the top of your page. And I'm going to model some strategies for you that I have used in the classroom. And when you see one that you believe is a strategy, I want you just to make a note of it on that sheet. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll stop and review that sheet. And hopefully you will have seen some of the strategies I'm trying to model. So I want you to imagine that you're not college educated professionals for the next hour, that you are an adult ed learner who functions at first, second grade level. Okay. So some of the strategies you're going to see, I would not use for this group if I were teaching you something, but I want to show you how I would do this with my adult learners. So please don't think I'm crazy. Hopefully I've been out of the classroom a long time, so I hope that I can do this without being insulting, because that's one of the things with adult learners that I would never want to do. Those of you who are on the chat, please make yourselves a sheet that says strategy as well. The camera on this computer is not working, but I am moving around the room anyway, because that's my style. Okay. So you have your strategy sheet. Just make notes as you see them if you think it's a strategy. Okay, thank you. Objectives for today. We have 4 things that we need to cover. Number 1, I want you to learn why unit study is a useful tool to teach struggling learners. Number 2, I want you to understand how to develop a unit of study if you want to use that. Number 3, I want to share some tools with you that could help you teach the units. And number 4, I want to model some strategies for you that will help you with your struggling learners. Now, before I go any further, that's okay. You can leave that up here actually, because there's something you need to know about me. First of all, I've taught adult ed. I started in 1998. I graduated from a little college in Tennessee, one of the best teacher education programs in the country at that time. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. I graduated with a degree in elementary education. I'm dyslexic. That's the thing you need to know. My parents knew when I was 3 years old, there's something different about this child. They never said wrong with this child. They never said weird. They just knew it was different. Something was different. And they started working with me then, before dyslexia even had a name to us. So I was fortunate. My mom recognized early on, this one's different. So I had the best of both worlds. My father was math and science. He was great at it. My mom was the language arts person, so I had that influence all the time. That's one of the things our students don't have. A lot of students I've worked with have been, I guess shamed is the word, because they want a diploma or they want to get better in life. Maybe they're the only one in the family who's ever done that. So a lot of them come with that stigma anyway. And then when you define a struggling learner, that stigma gets worse. So for our purposes today, I'm going to use this definition of a struggling learner. It could be a student with low basic skills, reading, writing, and math. Folks with learning disabilities, cognitive disabilities, physical disabilities, severe emotional or psychological issues. Dealt with a lot of students in my time who have severe PTSD, and that impacts how they function in a normal situation. They need more than worksheets. I'm one of those kids. You could hand me a worksheet and I'd make a paper airplane out of it, and that thing would fly. I was good at that. But the words on that sheet meant nothing to me, and they don't to the students I've worked with. They have predominantly one learning style. I was fortunate. I can learn just about any way if it's presented to me correctly. I can see it, I can hear it, I can do all those things, and I can get it because I have the coping strategies to know how to do that. My students didn't. They had no idea, first of all, that they're a struggling learner. They think they're ready to graduate tomorrow. They do. I mean, they think I'm going to go for a week and I'll have a diploma. Sometimes ESL students are struggling learners simply because of the ESL barrier, but I've been amazed over the years at how many of our adults, ESL students, have learning problems that weren't diagnosed because in their countries, formal education wasn't really a thing for some of them, but they really struggled because they had the issues above this line and they're trying to learn English. So for my purposes today, this is how I'm describing a struggling learner. And if you answered the poll online, I've been watching that so that I can try to tailor this presentation to that. Some of you raised things that I'd never thought of with struggling learners. So that poll has been very helpful. I think you will find some things that you will find helpful today. So before I get into this approach, let me tell you how the approach came about. I told you that I graduated in 1998. I had been working with adult ed as a volunteer for a long time, since 1991. And they offered me a full-time job. And I said, great, I'm ready. I had spent time with kindergarten and I knew that wasn't for me. Loved middle school, but I really liked adult ed. Welcome, come in. So I went to see the lady I'd been working with, the director of the program. And she said, I have a beginning class starting up that I think you might be interested in. And I said, sure, that's great. So she handed me the roster, had 15 students on it. 5 of them were ESL, spoke no English at all. The rest of them functioned at first and second grade level, even though we don't talk about grade level. That's how my mind was wired. And the highest one, the most advanced one, was about second grade, about 2.9. And that was the advanced section of the class. So they showed up for their first day of class, and there I was. And I thought, you know, I have a degree in elementary education. I can do this. I can teach them.
And I know they need 10 years of education, but I've got 10 years. I can do this. So the director walked in and she said, I didn't tell you that we retest in 12 weeks. And I said, okay, that's great. And she said, we need all of them to show some improvement by 12 weeks. And I'm thinking, they can write a few nouns and, they wanted an NRS game in 12 weeks. So I had a helper. He was a retired nuclear engineer. The man could do advanced calculus without a pencil. He was amazing. But he said, I don't even know how you teach somebody to subtract. You just do it. When I think 396 million minus 15.6, I just do that in my head. I don't even know where to start. And so I was realizing I might have a problem here. I have 15 people who are counting on me to get them through. And I'll be dad burned if I'm going to let them down. I will find a way. And that goes on your strategy sheet. You have to make up your mind that I will find a way. So my first day in class with these folks, I realized in a hurry, they're saying some of the things that I've said in my education. And it started to dawn on me, I'm seeing the same traits in them that I see in myself. They think like I do. And I knew at that point, this could be a problem because I have a learning disability. But then it dawned on me, I have a real asset here because I know how they think. I know what this problem looks like from the side of the student. So I began to think about things that would work for me. And that's as a learner that worked for me. And that's where this approach that I'm going to share with you today came from. I went back the next day. 14 of them were there. One of them wasn't. And I said, we're going to have to figure this out. You and I are going to have to work together to make this work. So what do you need from me as your teacher? What do you want me to do for you? And they just looked at me. They didn't know. Some of them didn't even know what I was asking. They didn't understand English. And so I made a deal with them. I made a contract with them. I said, if you show up for class twice a week when you're supposed to, that's your job. That's your part of this bargain. I will show up and I will bring the stuff that will make this work. And that's where we started. And that's where this approach began to grow. I had 12 weeks to teach them everything I could about 6 subjects. They needed science, math. Notice I put those 2 first because that's my world. I don't do well with words. I'm not a good reader. I struggle. Science, math, social studies, writing, writing. Vocabulary, and I've missed one. What's the other one? Missed. Reading. I'll never miss math. So I had to figure out a way. I saw them for 4 hours a week, and they were there. They kept their end of the deal. That's one of the great things about this method. It works to get them there. Had to get all that in there in 4 hours a week for 12 weeks. I had 48 hours maximum to teach them all I could. And one of them said, when am I going to graduate? I said, well, we're going to do our best to get you ready for that next test. And that's all I could say. Never lie to them. Never say, oh, it's going to be okay and this is easy. I learned up just early. Don't lie to them. So here's the plan that I came up with. I'm going to teach them with a unit. I'm going to pick a concept that they need to know, and we're going to build this whole curriculum around this concept. Now, we didn't have curriculum. That was another thing. I asked the director, where's the curriculum I'm supposed to teach? Where are the books?
She said, oh, we don't use books. You just, whatever you want to teach, you just bring your stuff. And I didn't have anything. I was just out of school. I'm waiting on the county to give me books. And that didn't happen. So I started developing things just off the top of my head. And this is what I came up with. I'm going to show you some real life examples, but here are some words to describe this approach. It's multidisciplinary. We're taking 5, I counted 6 subjects because my students needed phonics. They needed to know the vowels. They needed to know all of those things that you learn in kindergarten. So vocabulary is my 6th one. It's defined as unit study, thematic, integrated learning. But these are the parts that really mattered to me, those bottom 4. It's hands-on. I knew that was critical for me. So I knew if it worked for me, it's going to work for them, I think. It needs to be in depth. You can't tell me as a dyslexic person something just with a shallow description and expect me to remember that. It has to be a deep concept in my mind. So I thought that's the way to go with these folks. You have to keep it focused. I've had teachers that start talking kind of like I'm doing now, and they just start rambling. And within a few minutes, I'm just lost. I don't even care what they're saying because they lost me in that first minute. I knew I can't do that with these students. I have to get their attention, and I have to keep it for 2 hours. I have to keep it coherent. I have to stick to what I'm trying to teach them. It is appropriate in a multi-level classroom. In diverse classrooms, students with little English experience, student might remember my 2nd grader that was the top of the class. Those students could all benefit from this approach. And before we go to the next slide, I'm going to pass some things around that I want you to just look at. First of all, I want to share this with you. Crystal had a session this morning and we got this resource from Essential Ed. This is talking about this population of students. So if you didn't get one of these free resources, stop by their table. They'll give you as many as you want. I just can't bring a bunch home with me on the plane, but you can download this as well. So I'll leave this. If you want to look at it, you're welcome. I'll just start it around. That is not mine. Here is what I'm going to show you today. And I'll pass this around. This is a prototype of a book that I'm building for one of our teachers now. We have some students who have been with us for years and they haven't made any progress. So we hired a new teacher and she wants to teach low levels, but she's not a teacher. She's coming from the business world, actually from WIOA. So I'm doing this curriculum for her. They've started it and they love it. The common theme is colonization. And so I'm going to show you, this is one tool for teaching this. I love interactive notebooks. I've used them my whole career. It's hands down the best tool I ever used for teaching. And I'll tell you why as we go through this. But I'll pass this around so that you can look at it. This is the prototype. It's not fully finished. There are missing pages. There are things in here, but you can at least get an idea. Okay. With the students that I'm talking about, this is where I started. And it was a lofty shot. I knew this is going to be tough. I'm going to teach them about the 3 branches of government because that's something that every student who takes a high school equivalency test is going to see. And this is the piece. This one's not that old. It's been made since then. But I'll pass this around. This was what we called an anchor piece. So look back at what my characteristics are here. I'll show you the multidisciplinary in just a second with the prototype. But here's the part. I literally had them to construct this piece. They had a notebook that we kept them in, although that evolved later. But I needed to teach them to be organized. have you had students who come in and they don't know where anything is? Their papers are upside down, they're falling out. That drives me crazy because I'm not that type of thinker. I've learned the hard way, have to keep all this organized. So we started there. We started with, I want you to keep this notebook, and this is what we're going to keep in there. And we're going to build our own textbook because we don't have a textbook. So by the time you leave me, you'll have a textbook. You'll have a piece of information that you can take home and keep forever. So you can advance the slide. Thank you. This is where it started. I realized I need something that engages all their senses. They need to see it, they need to hear it, they need to hold it. When possible, they need to smell it and taste it. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in the prototype in just a minute. I want them to see things in many forms. If I just hand them a worksheet with a bunch of words on it, that doesn't mirror real life. If you pick up a newspaper, you're going to see diagrams and tables and paragraphs and maps. All of those things are real life situations. And if I don't show them that, I'm not teaching them. I'm just exposing them to words. And there's a difference. I want all of them in the class together. My first instinct was let's split the beginners off, and that's not my approach. I found that they did a lot better when I left them all together. The lower levels learned from the higher levels, but that went the other way too. You would find lower levels who were really good at one thing or another. Folks who had done construction are some of the best folks with fractions you'll ever find. I needed things that were easy to assemble in the classroom. And that fifth one, I needed stuff that was cheap. I didn't have a lot of money to go out. I was just out of college, and we surely didn't have it in the budget. So I bought some notebooks on the back to school sale, and I thought, we'll build our own textbook. I will give them the information I want them to have. I needed to consider all my learning styles, the folks who were hands-on, the folks who need to hear. This is not the kind of class where they sit for 2 hours and look at a worksheet. We're active, we're talking, we're using all the skills that we can possibly use, and we're taking a lot of breaks. It's another thing. I wanted to emphasize the depth of knowledge with them. Not just knowing there were 13 colonies, but knowing about those 13 colonies. I wanted material that would stick. I wanted them to, one thing I learned, they'll come back tomorrow and they don't even remember what we talked about yesterday. Have no idea what we just did. And I can relate to that. So I knew what made things stick for me. Encourage critical thinking. One of the blessed things about this that I wasn't anticipating, and I'll pass these soon. This one was about Earth's atmosphere. So I had them to cut these out. And while they were cutting them out, we discussed things. That was my time to review what we did yesterday. So this became an interactive model of Earth's atmosphere. And as we were doing this, we would review, the layers of Earth itself. And then these are the layers that go up from that. So this was one of the most critical times of the day, because not only were they were using reasoning skills to assemble these. Most of them had no idea how to put this together. These basic foldable pieces, they had no clue where to start. So that in itself taught them a lot of geometry. And so we would spend time prepping these pieces, getting them ready. And then we would do our lesson, our follow-up, whatever we had to do that day. I was trying to make it stick. I wanted to build an image in the mind that would last until the next day. Okay, next slide. So how did I make this happen? And whether you use the book or whatever method you want to use, and I'm just going to start these around so that you can see other examples. These have accumulated over the years. If you want to just pass some both ways. And you need to choose your topic. So for me, with the prototype, we're doing the colonization of America. And I set dates, 1492 to whenever the last colony was founded, 1767 maybe, I'm not sure. And then I wanted to write my standards-based objectives. This is one of the things I have to stay on my teachers now about. They want to teach things they enjoy, which is perfectly normal and natural, but they need to be based on standards. The students need to have, they need to be able to see this on a test for this time to be productive. So find your standards. Then brainstorm some activities related to the topic. Develop a list of rich vocabulary, tiers 2 and 3. This is not basic vocabulary that they use every day, although we had to work on that too. But pick some words that are tough words, 3 syllables, and spend some time working on that. And then find or develop curriculum to support your objectives. So you can pick a unit topic and do this process for anything you want to do. And on the next slide, you'll see my planning diagram for the prototype that's coming around. So I'm not going to read this, I promise. I put my topic up there. I picked my reading concepts. Here are my objectives, the things that have to align. I want them to pass the TABE test, and these are the skills that they're going to use. So just to give you some examples, in the reading section, some of the things that I used, the life and travels of Christopher Columbus. That was a main idea and details. The first Thanksgiving, I'm going to refer to that one in a minute. So I tried to pick things that I thought might show up on a social studies test at some point. And then I was presented with, how do I get this material? Now, back in 1998, I had to write it because there was no Chat GPT. But now I go to Chat GPT and I say, write a paragraph about the life and travels of Christopher Columbus at the 2nd grade level. And 30 seconds later, there it is. I cut that out, we put it in the book, and that's the passage that they read. I would encourage you to fact check it, because not everything that comes out of there is accurate, but it's close. So the writing skills, these are just generic writing skills like the rules of capital letters, but the sentences that I use to teach those are from ChatGPT. Give me some sentences about the founding of Jamestown, whatever you're working on. So I'm constantly reinforcing that topic that we want to cover. Math, I taught them, or I will teach them, first of all, in science about latitude and longitude. And then we can talk about hurricane coordinates, where they actually get to plot Hurricane Andrew's path. So why would that relate to Christopher Columbus? Anybody have a thought? He was a sailor, and he sailed in November, October, November, when hurricane season was at its highest. So we talk about types of windstorms, how they're alike and how they're different. The math, of course, is my favorite. I did cover some things about Jacob Smith's fields. There's a picture in the book of, I drew out a sketch of a garden. We can talk about area. We can talk about yield from that garden. If he has 5 apple trees and each tree produces 10 bushel a year, you know, you can do all kinds of things with that. Use ChatGPT to come up with some word problems related to, or story problems, we call them, related to colonization. Science, we covered the directions, or they will, the map of the world. I want them to know the continents and oceans, just that general knowledge stuff. One of the things that I built in there The dangers of tobacco. Tobacco was a huge cash crop. So what's different now than then, if anything? Then social studies, the colonies themselves, the Mayflower Compact. I actually put a copy of that into the book so that they could see the document itself. It's very hard to read. If you look at that, there are capital letters in weird places, all kinds of stuff. But I always start with vocabulary. And here are the 24 words that I chose. We're looking at syllables, spelling, alphabetical order, all kinds of things, roots, prefixes. Again, it all relates to that common unit theme, the common theme. I chose an interactive notebook, but you could choose any tool you want to use here. If you think that's not something you would enjoy, go a different route. I want them to work collaboratively to do some of, especially the social studies skills, but the social and soft skills that we try to build into every lesson. I use a lot of videos, anything that brings all of the senses together. That's important. Color coding. This one's a big one. You'll notice in the books that the reading words are always red across books. So when we get finished with colonization and we move on to something else, that color's still there. So I know when I see that, that it relates to a reading word. Science is, can't remember, I know math is orange. So any math vocabulary word, there's a glossary built into that thing so that we're teaching them how to use a glossary. I don't know that people do that much anymore, but a good textbook, in my opinion, has a glossary, and they need to know how to use it. So I want to pose this to you. Are there any potential problems with what I have up here that jump out to you? If you were planning this unit, anything come to mind as a potential problem? Folks online can't hear us, but yes, ma'am.
When people miss.
Yes. When people miss class, how a way to deal with that? First of all, when my students got used to this, they didn't miss class because they didn't want to miss the piece of the notebook that we covered that day. And I didn't think that would happen. And it didn't with all classes. But for the most part, they were there because they wanted the piece of the notebook. But every student in my class had a mailbox. It was just a hanging file folder. And if they were out, I just dropped their piece in the mailbox. And it was their responsibility to get it out, ask a classmate to explain to them what they missed. If necessary, I would do it. But really, it was just a blank page in the notebook because you just can't make this up in 4 hours a week. So that was one of the benefits of this for me, that it boosted my attendance. I'm curious to see if that happens in the class we're piloting now. This is just an example of how to plan a unit. The tool I chose is the interactive notebook. So let me tell you a little bit about it. Have any of you used one before in other classes? What are your feelings about an interactive notebook? Good or bad? Okay. Tell me why.
It holds them accountable for their learning, and they feel like they're a part of it. And it keeps them active from the beginning of the class on. Negative is finding that interactive notebook curriculum is what I've done teacher to pay. They do have it, but it adds up pretty fast.
All of the resources that I have available, I will make free to you at the end of this session. I'm not trying to sell you something, but that's the catch. You have to come up with these materials. And they're easy to make to me because I love doing it and I'm very comfortable with Word, but they're hard to find, especially with adult content. You don't want to give them things with ABCs and things that look like it has to be adult content. Even though the skill is second grade, it has to look like It's an adult content. One thing I strongly recommend is to make one yourself. Have a book available to show them this is what it's supposed to look like. But I found I was able to teach them critical reasoning skills with that better than anything I've ever done. Because when they start cutting things out and folding it, you see where the gaps are in the thinking. You know, they can't figure out how to fold this and make it work. And that's a teachable moment, and it's priceless. I couldn't teach that with a worksheet. Okay, thank you. Okay. Today, in this world of technology, I make a digital version of the notebook. So my teacher has a digital notebook. It's on GoodNotes. She has an iPad with a pen. And so her notebook is built into GoodNotes. Here's one that I wrote I work in a college, and the nursing staff ask us to help their students with dosage math. So I wrote an interactive notebook for college students. Out of the 15 students in the class, 14 of them passed the final assessment, and they loved this. The one who didn't pass didn't like this. She said, I don't like the cutting and pasting, and I respect that. I truly do. But I'll pass this around. This worked wonders. In 1 week, the pharmacology students learned the dosage formula and everything they needed to know about that math. And they passed, they graduated this last term with their nursing LPN licenses. So this doesn't just work for your basic folks. I'm writing one right now for our electrical instructor. It's got trigonometry in it, but the Ohm's wheel that they have to learn the formulas is interactive. It literally turns on a thing. So it works. Okay, so let's take a look at the notebook itself. This was the part that my college degree didn't prepare me for. I thought everybody knows how to organize. You know, it's just something. It's like Mr. Keyboard in the math. It's just something we do, but it's not. And see, I should have known that because I don't do this easily. So the first thing I did, I made the notebook exactly like the student version. The tabs, reading is always red. They're always the same color. They're always in the same order. Glossary is up there. Resources is a pocket. I give them an alphabet strip because when I want them to put words in alphabetical order, they don't know the alphabet. And when that strip is out there, you can see it. The vowels are a different color so that they can easily spot the vowels if they need to. But that goes in the resources pocket. We are building a textbook. It's color-coded. It's tabbed because I'm teaching them organized thinking. One of the first things we do is set up a table of contents and talk about how you use that because they don't know that. Some of them have no idea how it works. Do you see a potential problem with this screen? There's a serious one that until I started watching for it, I would never have thought of it. What is a potential problem for a student on this screen?
My first thing is being colorblind. I have a cousin who is, so I notice things like that. Yeah.
That's it. If you're colorblind, that means nothing. And I'll tell you how I realized this. My brother-in-law is a master electrician, but he can't get a license because he's colorblind and he can't see the different colors in the wires. And I was working on something and he said, which one of them's red? I'm like, well, and it dawned on me, he's colorblind. He can't tell. So you have to account for those things. You have to make sure that those kinds of disabilities are considered. Okay, Crystal, thank you. Okay, here is the reading. If you happen to have the prototype, if you turn to page 23, this is what you'll see. This is the reading cover. So I taught my students to read with this. They had 3 cards. They were always the same color. Main idea is always blue, keywords is always yellow, and red is topic. And for every passage that we had, we did those. And they're cards. They can move them. That's where the engagement comes from for me. As long as my hands are busy, my mind's busy. And I don't want them on cell phones all day in class. The cell phones went away. It was the most miraculous thing I had ever seen because they were too busy. They didn't have time to text. They were busy and engaged. So every time in the beginning, we read a passage, we had these. And then gradually, as they got better and better, we took those away. But the colors were built in there. I could say, what are the things that we need to consider for keywords? The process was in their minds. And that's what I was trying to teach. Because on the TABE test, it's this process and remember, these students are very low level. They're not going to pass the high set tomorrow or the GED. They're learning the basic skills. And you can see my page that I've annotated. I taught them the word annotate and what it meant and how you do it. How do you actually annotate? You have to teach them how to take notes. I don't know. Potential problem with this one. Anybody? I see one because I'm dyslexic, but anything that stands out to you? Yes, ma'am. Sure.
So the notes that I'm seeing, what would be in their notebook? Okay. So that might be a little overwhelming for some students. And also a lot of students don't know how to take notes. So unless I'm writing the notes for them to copy, this might be a little harder.
And that's exactly it. Remember, my teachers have this. They can write on the board. The students are copying. The colors that you're seeing here are paired back to those tabs. This is a social studies word, or there's a significance there. But for me as a dyslexic student, that's too crowded. That is overwhelming to me. If you look at this resource, this is one thing I really like about it. You notice the white space. This is good for me. That would be way overwhelming for me. A lot of students can't copy that fast. I mean, they're trying to keep up with you copying. So this would be more for your level 4s, students who are able to copy and able to write. But for those lower levels, I would back off a little on this. This is too much, in my opinion, for them. Yes, the tabs in this book are hyperlinked. So my teacher can click on this one and it jumps to the science section just like that. And then the students, the page numbers are down there. The students can turn to that page so that she's keeping them where they need to be. If you want to use interactive notebooks, tell them, do not tear pages out. Do not put other things in there because you're going to need these pages for a very specific purpose. Bring it to class with you every day. And if you miss a day, you've missed a lot. And it will work. If they buy into it, it'll work. But yes, the tabs are interactive on this version. And then their books have the tabs just like this. They're physically stuck in there. Here is an example of the math section. This is page 43 in the prototype. This is page 53 in the actual book. And the skill here is reading a pictograph. So we're talking about this character in our theme, our unit, Jacob Smith. And here's Jacob Smith's garden. So we've got the different kinds of symbols. My goal was to teach them to use ratio and proportion to calculate yield and profit. That sounds horrendous, but never underestimate your students' ability to do this if you teach them the right way. I've had students at level 2 NRS who've passed the diploma with flying colors, not because of me, but because we taught them the right skills and we taught them the right way. So just because they're NRS 2, don't assume that they can't do these things. You just have to structure it in a way that they can understand it. Potential problems on this pictograph. Jacob Smith's annual harvest.
They don't know how to count.
I was working with one of my teachers the other day, and she was doing a profile of her class of the items they missed on a test. And it dawned on me quickly, she doesn't know how to do a tally table. She had 15 students and there were 15 marks out here. She didn't know to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Never assume anything. And this woman's brilliant. She's one of the finest teachers we have. But that one little thing is just not in her frame of thinking. Same with the students. If each of these represents 20 bushels, this doesn't say that Mr. Smith had 5 apples. That have to understand of counting by 20, 40, 60. Some of them can't do that. They may have to write it down. That's where you have to step in and find the way to help them. Another thing that's going to throw them, the half. I remember this in school. Like, what is that? It's a half. And so I have to take that value and half it. Some of the ESL students may not know exactly what these things are. This is where I would bring in these things and let them taste them. Let them hold them. Engage all the senses. And that's just fun. I mean, if you get to bring a snack and there's one in here, I don't think I'm showing you. One of the math exercises is a Thanksgiving recipe where you adjust the Thanksgiving recipe. And it's for succotash. My word would be succotash. The native word is in there. Bring that in and let them taste it. Let them understand that Three Sisters method of farming, the beans and the squash and the corn, and how that's one of their science lessons, how that process worked and why it was so critical. That's a writing exercise. What would have happened if they didn't know the Three Sisters method? What did happen in some of those early colonies? Social studies, one of our reading skills is sequencing. So I built this piece in for them to look at the order of colonization. I wanted this because it's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot here, and that's why I chose it. Because at this point in the game, they should be able to handle a little more overwhelming. So we'll go through each of these and look at things about each of those places. My capital letters lesson, I'm teaching them to capitalize places. If they write a city and a state in a sentence, how to use commas correctly to do that. So it all comes together in the unit, and that's what makes it stick. Okay, Crystal, I'm not going to do potential problem on this one. Don't want to run out of time. Okay, science. I want them to learn the continents and oceans and practice cardinal and intermediate directions. And notice I've made a note to myself, this needs to happen before we do latitude and longitude, because they have to understand the globe to understand the global positioning system. Potential problems on this one. There's a big one for me who's dyslexic. Something I'll struggle the rest of my life with it. Directions. When you say the right side of the page is, here's a question. Is the right side of this map representing east or west? What's the problem with that question? You don't know right and left. You're right and my right. In forensic medicine, this was a huge problem for me because I had to look at a diagram of a body and tell you what's good. Is it your right or my right? You know, those kinds of things are challenging for people like me. So here's a trick. Which side is left? The L. Teach them to look for those kinds of things. This one is not an L. Teach them those visual strategies. Because for somebody like me, that's critical. If you put me out here and said walk west, I couldn't just start walking. I have to think. I have to visualize this whole picture in my mind. I opened my window the other night and looked down here at Dealey Plaza, and I thought, that's where Kennedy died. I didn't even know that I'm looking at the place where the president was killed. It's right there, literally. I am directionally challenged. I would get lost in a paper bag, I promise you. So remember that when you're teaching students at those lower levels. Some of them may know, some of them are going to know better than I do. And that's okay too, to let them know that. But that's a potential problem on here. Writing. They got to know the 4 types of sentences, how to punctuate them. These little things lift up so that they can quiz themselves when they go home. I want them to close this and see if they know what's under there. That's the power, one of the powers of this book. But my sentences are about, guess what? ESL 2, yes. Columbus, Thanksgiving, all those things that I'm trying to reinforce. My sentences use those vocabulary words so that they're practicing those a lot. Where do I get my sentences? Yes, tell ChatGPT and it'll give them to you. It's great. This is one of my favorites. Math's my favorite, but this is my favorite. If you have the prototype, you can see this very clearly. These lift up. These are Freyer models. If you've taught vocabulary, these are especially helpful for ESL. So you're bringing your ESL students into this equally. Freyers will give you a definite, these are modified Freyers. These are not the originals, but I give them the definition with syllables. We talk about the types of syllables, open, closed, schwa is not a syllable, are controlled, the different types. I teach them to break syllables, parts of speech, synonyms, antonyms, homonyms. Then we do some characteristics. We talk about the picture itself. And here's where I would start to introduce them to, if this represents 10, what's half of that? Or how do I find that? And they're not sometimes just going to know. So here's what I would do. If the circle is 10, half of the way. All right, if the circle is 10, can I take this half of it? Does that make a difference which half I take? If the circle is 10, is there another way? Take half the way. Let them see this. Don't just tell them. Let them physically do it. I had a group of students, they were in RS2, and I was trying to teach them about coordinate graphing. So it was not working. And so I went out in the hallway and I put with painter's tape down the hallway a huge coordinate grid. It looked like a runway. I took them out there, stood them at origin, and I said, okay, move to coordinate 3, 5. And I didn't even have to tell them because I'd told them already. As soon as they started moving and they felt that, they knew it. It was that fast. Let them engage all their senses. That's critical for people like me. Flashcards. I give them a pocket. We keep the flashcards in there. That's fine. So here are some results that I saw in my classroom. Probably number 1 was improved attendance because they didn't want to miss the succotash or the fun thing that we did with this. They wanted to be there. I think probably the biggest reason is because it was safe. You don't have to do a worksheet. This is not about what you know. It's about what you're learning, what I want you to know. Remember our contract? You show up and I'll take care of the rest. That's a lot safer than you show up and I'm going to give you a math page with 50 problems on it. It works. Level gains, they're slow because that level of student needs a lot of time. Honestly, I saw more gains on official practice tests because we're drilling the concept and not so much the rote calculation. So my gains were coming from people passing the social studies test, not so much from TABE, which is important. The third one, their minds got organized. And I would see them taking their stuff and organizing it without me telling them. That's a life skill. It's very valuable. They were more engaged, weren't worried about cell phones. They bonded with each other because this was we talk about it, we move around, we're doing all these things. Critical thinking skills. They were very proud of these books. One young woman took hers apart and sewed it with thread. I would love to, I almost offered to buy it from her. It's how beautiful it was. But she was so proud of that. And I would not have taken it, but it was gorgeous. It allows them to creatively express themselves. Some students, when you get to those Freyer models, they'll draw their own picture. Or I can't draw, but I can do other things that make sense to me. The skills are basic, but you've got a pretty impressive presentation when you're done. It's something that looks impressive, and I think that's good. Okay, let's quickly talk about some strategies, and we will have time for Q&A, and I'll have you out of here on time. I did not demonstrate all of the strategies I wanted to, but anybody have any that you observed that you put on your strategies list? If not, it's okay.
When you mentioned the mailbox, when they were missing, you give them materials so they can do it.
And they put things in other people's mailboxes. On Valentine's Day, the mailboxes were bulging because that was fun. They would come in and drop their Valentines for someone and Christmas cards. They found ways I didn't. But I put things in the mailboxes that they missed, and I knew that they could get them that way. Any other strategies?
The annotation, which is something that I really loved in learning.
Teaching them to annotate, to take notes. That's a good one. The sheet you're looking at is a strategy. What did we do first thing? Why did I ask you to keep that sheet, you think? So remember, I was focusing your attention on where I wanted it to go. I wanted you to watch for the strategies. I wanted you to look for things that fit that list. And that's critical for people like me. Tell me what you want me to do, and I can do it. But if I'm trying to play guess what's in my head, I don't know. So focus me where you want me to go. Me moving around the room, and I would like to be back there. That's the ideal. Is important for people like me. If somebody stands in one place the whole time, they lose me because I'm wired a little differently. So movement can be a really good thing. I tell our teachers, I don't want you to just hand them a worksheet and sit down. I need you to engage with them somehow. Doesn't have to be an interactive notebook, but however it works for you, keep them engaged. Color coding is important for my students. White space. One I did not do for you is thinking aloud, where I would deliberately act like I lost my place. I would say, oh, wow, look at that flag over there. So everybody in the room looks and they're looking. And then I said, what was I talking about? And that's all an act. But they would say, oh, you were telling us about, they're paying attention. And that helps me know I have them engaged. I have them where I need them to be. Make sure you cover all learning styles. Everybody doesn't learn like me, and that's a good thing. Redirect them back to what we've already talked about. Tell them in writing about the objectives, why they're important. Using hand signals. Literally show them which side's left. Let them see that. And you have to do it a lot. And then you'll start to see them doing it. And eventually they don't need to do it because they can visualize it. Looking for pitfalls. That's an important thing with students. Put it up there and say, what problems do you see? I see a mistake that I made. Can you find that mistake? You're teaching them to proofread, but you're also teaching them it's okay to make mistakes. Doesn't ruin the whole game just because you mess up. If I'm playing basketball and I miss a layup, do I just go sit down? Don't. Keep playing because that's how it works. The contract. Let them know clearly. This is what you can expect from me. I will be here at 8:30. I will be prepared, and I will meet you where you are. And your end of the deal is to be here on time with your notebook. And that goes a long way. One of the things I would very much encourage you to do is to speak slowly. For people like me, when speakers are going too fast, it's really hard to stay engaged. It's hard to stay focused. And it's hard to follow what you're trying to tell me to do. Take a lot of breaks, even if you just stop talking for a few seconds. Just let my brain slow down a little bit. Yes, that's important for people like me. Watch them in their free time. If you say we're going to take a 10-minute break, you just do whatever you want to for the next 10 minutes. Casually observe what they're doing. If they pull out their phones and start scrolling, they might be a hands-on learner. Might not, but they might. If they turn around and start talking immediately, they're probably an auditory learner. You need to use that when you work with them. You can learn a lot about somebody by watching them in their free time. Okay, I'm almost done here. Well, it went away. Oh, don't put them on the spot. I know there are a lot of people who say that if students aren't talking to you in class, they're not learning. From my perspective, that's not true. I don't want you to put me on the spot. Don't make me read out loud. Don't make me work with someone I don't want to work with. Let me learn to do that. And, scaffold that process for me. Help me learn how to do that. When I was teaching, I kept my classroom in a U shape, and we would do this thing we called roll call. I would go down the line, call them by name. That's so important. And I would say, Andrew, and he would say thumbs up or thumbs down. And I would do this maybe twice during a class. I gave them red, green, and yellow squares. And if things were getting too hot to handle, they would just lay the red one out there where I could see it. And I'm up walking around the room. They don't hold it up. They just push it out there where I can see it. As long as I see green, I'm good. I know that we're doing okay. But they would usually let me see yellow before red. It was rare to see red. They would push the yellow out there to say, I need you to slow down or something's not. And I knew them well enough to know what it was usually. If you have students that you know are dyslexic, you can print the colored overlays in Word. If you just make a Word document and put a text box in it with like a yellow highlight color, print those on transparency, and they work just as well as the Irwins. They're a lot cheaper too. I take those, cut them into strips, and the students can slide those strips down. It highlights the row that they're looking at. For me, that made a world of difference. The the sort of rose color works well for me. A lot of my students liked yellow for dyslexia. Yellow legal pads were some of their favorites. Okay, one other thing, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. When I was teaching them a new skill, I would have them to sit on their hands physically. Put your hands under you, sit on your hands. You can't speak. All you can do is use your eyes. And I would work the math problem, maybe 2 of them, just them watching me. And then I would say, okay, I want you to stay sitting on your hands, but now you can use your voice. I'm gonna do the work, but I want you to tell me how to do it. What do I do next? And literally my hand didn't move until somebody said, do this next. Then I would say, okay, you take your hands out, get your pencil. We're going to do this one together. And then eventually I just stopped talking and walked around and allowed them to do whatever it was. It's a really good strategy to teach them rote skills. In Tennessee, we call that direct instruction, or the Tennessee instruction model. It works really well with these folks. Okay, any questions? We're down to the last couple of minutes.
So my question is, with the books that you are doing, I like interactive. I've never considered doing it on the adult ed level. I just always considered it for my elementary kids when I taught 5th grade or whatever. So would I just do this for my lower students? And I guess it's 2-part. Would I only just do this for my lower students? And if so, what does that look like? Let's say I'm teaching in, colonization, and I'm doing reading. Does my higher students do this as well, or just my lower students?
All of them, I would say. What you would want to do is make sure that your reading level is appropriate. But I actually use this. We don't build notebooks, but this is a training piece that I did for my staff. They were having trouble doing their weekly processes, and it was driving me crazy. So I made this, gave it to them, fixed the problem. But now when we have staff meetings, they want one of these. They want it written out like this, and I don't cut them out. I send them the pieces and say, here it is if you want to put it together. But they know that that piece is their weekly process. So it works with all levels. And you're going to have folks who don't want to cut it out, and I get that. I truly do. But for my experience, they don't mind that part because they're getting so much value out of it that sort of takes away. And when they see me doing it, it was a helpful thing too. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. I'm going to show you. Question was, how do we get the materials? And Crystal, if you'll advance. I have a website that I started for our teachers. It's right here. And you can print a lot of these from that site. I add to it often. The pieces from the prototype are going on there. I'm building that now for Catherine. They're starting the vocabulary, and so far it's been a hit. So I'll be adding those if you want those pieces. And there are lots of other things on there. There are some math resources. I think order of operations is on there. So things that I've developed over the years, you can email me at this address, and I would be happy to talk with you or help you in any way I can. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. The PowerPoint is on Hula. You can download it. It's exactly what's up here. Print it. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you, and have a great rest of your conference.